Okay, this is the first of two podcasts going over the syllabus for the story of the New Testament. So you'll find the syllabus in Blackboard, and when you open that up, you'll see several of the information that's important for the course. Obviously, my name, as you see here on the screen. Now, during the summer, I don't keep office hours, regular office hours, but of course you want to contact me at any time, and the best way to contact me is by email, and I'll try and get back to you just as soon as I can. Usually I try to get back to students during the summer when they're taking a course, usually within 24 hours. You also have my home number there. That's an area code 405 number, and so you can call me if there's an emergency. There's also my office extension number, but since I don't really keep office hours during the summer, that's probably not the most efficient way of contacting me. All the syllabuses have what the OC motto is, also our OC mission statement, as well as the Christian worldview and teaching philosophy. And this is something that the institution requires for all of these courses. You also see a course description. So basically what this course does, it's going to introduce you to the general background, which is the author, date, and the occasion of the New Testament books. So you'll be introduced to all the New Testament books, as well as some major ideas and themes that are contained in them. And what I typically do for my courses is I focus in on what each book has to say about Christ. Since Christ is the major part of the story of the New Testament, it's important to see the distinctive things that each book tells us about Christ. So also you'll see all that outlined. There are no prerequisites for this course, although it does help that you have had the Life of Christ class and the Life of the Early Church class. So this course is relevant for anybody who is interested in looking at the New Testament as authoritative text for defining the nature of Christian faith. What I mean by this is that not everyone believes it's necessary to use the New Testament to define Christian faith, but for those who believe that whatever is called Christianity today, or the Christian faith, that it should somehow relate to the New Testament, it's important to see what's actually contained within it. And also, by reviewing the major themes of the New Testament, you'll get a basic understanding of the storyline about God and about the message of early Christianity. So you'll see the course objectives that are here, and you'll learn to describe the basic content of the story of Christian faith that was held by the New Testament authors. You'll also be able to identify the author, whenever we can know that information, the date and the occasion for each New Testament book. And you'll be examined on your ability to identify these in the quizzes and exams. You'll also be able to identify what part of the implications of the story of the Christian faith that is developed in each New Testament book. So in other words, certain times there are distinctive things that are spoken about in each book, and I'll try to make sure that I'm directing your attention to the distinctive contributions of these books. And also you'll be able to describe a story of the Christian faith that is historically connected to the story of the New Testament. So by that you'll be writing an essay, a New Testament story essay, in which you will share what you think the Christian faith is, and you will be expected to connect that story with things that are said in the New Testament. And basically this is something that you will describe how you think Christian faith ought to be understood. There are some required textbooks, and so certainly having access to a Bible to check when I make references to things will be important. You can use, of course, any modern translations. Also, there's a textbook by Walter Elwell and Walter Yarbrough, Encountering the New Testament, and there's an electronic version of that is available, and so that might be helpful to you. So the basic requirements for the course. A discussion board is a huge part of the course. You're expected to get in for the different units and participate on questions that I will set, but you're also expected to interact with other students in the class. And so not only do you have to respond to the questions that I ask, but you'll also be expected to respond, give feedback, your perception of what other students say. And so I have some guidelines for that we'll go over. There are also 10 quizzes that you take, and these are reading quizzes, and primarily reading quizzes, though they could also be some quiz material over the podcast, so things that you will hear me say in those lectures. There are 2 semester exams and 1 final exam. And there's also this, what I'm calling the New Testament story essay, which I will describe in a few minutes. You'll see the grading scale, which is pretty basic. The participation that is expected, since this is an online class, we don't meet together in a traditional class format. You are required to listen to all the recorded lectures, and you are required as well to engage in the discussion board's post. And in particular, the things that I look for when a student is engaged in these discussions is when they are asking questions, either questions of me, which I can sometimes respond to, or they're asking questions of one another, seeking further clarification, understanding about what a student may claim in their post. As I said, there are quizzes that you're supposed to take. And their quizzes are primarily multiple choice. They're fill in the blank, and maybe some true and false. And these cover usually the key terms, peoples, and places that are mentioned in the readings. There are 2 exams that I said cover the readings and the podcast. Again, these are primarily multiple choice. They will be time limited. You can use your book, but because it is under a time, it is not advisable that you skip listening to the podcast or you skip reading and taking the quizzes, because you will not have enough time to kind of hunt and peck for answers from the exam. So you need to do the reading, make notes, highlight where information is, especially with those quizzes. The quizzes will point you to the relevant information that you need to know. And so if you have taken notes, as it were, on the reading and taken notes for yourself during the podcast, then when you can have those notes available for you where information is, or key information, then when you take those exams, you'll be much easier. It'll be a whole lot easier for you to take those exams and to complete them within the time. So, the New Testament story essay is a key thing that you'll have. I'll mention this at this point here, and there's also some more information about the New Testament story essay in discussion in the Blackboard when you go to the module on the story of the New Testament. But here, just highlighting that this is an essay that you will describe what the majority of the New Testament books say about the story of Jesus. You're describing what is the grand story, the grand narrative that is indicated by several of these books. Not every book says everything about the grand story, but you're wanting to find where the major points, beliefs about the Christian faith can be found in the New Testament. So as if you were introducing the story to somebody who may be unfamiliar with the New Testament or maybe unfamiliar with Christianity, where those stories can be where those information about that story can be found. This is not an essay where you go over every book in the New Testament describing the books. That's not the assignment. The assignment is to describe the great big story of Christianity and where parts of that story can be found in the different books. So we'll explain more of that when we look at the module of the New Testament story essay. And this concludes then the first podcast over the syllabus.